From the lion's den to the angel's den. Welcome to the lion's den. It is one thing to be in a car on a safari in the middle of lions. It's quite another to be in the middle of them in a cave when they are hungry, as Daniel was for a whole night. But even if we have never been among lions, we sometimes find ourselves among people whose reasoning seems to be not very different from beasts of the jungle. What was the problem? Why was Daniel put in a lion's den? When a new hen is put in a chicken coop, all the other hens run to peck it until the new one starts to return the pecks, and they all end up accepting it. Something similar happened in the court that established King Darius of Media when he put Daniel over all the princes and wanted to put him over the whole kingdom as well. Envy and jealousy not only lead many to commit acts of cruelty against innocent people, but unlike hens or lions or animals in general, they can be very cunning in hiding the true reasons that they cause harm to others. Just watch the news to see how politicians seek to damage the reputation of the ruler in democratic governments or impersonate others in office. Someone said a bucket of many crabs doesn't need a lid, because when one crab is about to escape, the others press it with their tongues and throw it in the middle again. Thus envy operates among children, as in the case of Jacob's children, when he felt a predilection for Joseph. Among the leaders of the church, when they see that others appear more fit for the office they hold, as in Saul's case after David defeated Goliath, and among the nations as when other kingdoms wanted to settle in the land that God had given to his people and to whom he blessed. To help us grasp that evil which led Lucifer to want to take the place of God, the Lord included a commandment that urges us not to be carried away by jealousy. No Babylonian or Medo-Persian document mentioning King Darius has yet been found between the conquests of Babylon and the assumption of the kingdom by the Persian king Cyrus. But it is striking that Cyrus, after one of his generals conquered Babylon, did not use the title of King of Babylon for the first 9 months, but King of the countries. This was corroborated by Dr. William Shea by analyzing the cuneiform text of Babylon. Ancient Greek historians such as Xenophon, Herodotus, and Ctesias, and the Jewish historian Josephus identified Darius as being Cyaxares, Cyrus' uncle, until he ceded the kingdom of Babylon to his nephew. Darius would be more than a name, a title that was used in different realms, and that means he who holds firm the goodness. Darius was 62 years old by then, and as his kingdom in Babylon had just been established, he interpreted the proposal of his subjects as a desire to pay him special tribute to show their appreciation and willingness to obey him. The fact that these subjects included an honor greater than any other god is in keeping with what emperors used to require in ancient times. Historians tell us that the great Persian king was the absolute master of power, the high god on earth. They were to prostrate before him up to their feet, putting their faces against the earth. When Cyrus entered Babylon, the Persians worshipped him for the first time, showing their admiration and respect for him. Other examples of exaltation of kings and emperors over the gods are seen in Egypt, where the state receives a cult and the person who as the divine Pharaoh embodies the state is also worshipped. The Pharaoh holds the title of Supreme Pontiff, as being the image of divinity, and confers upon himself the attribute of infallibility. Also, the king of Babylon was worshipped as Supreme Pontiff. The kings wore sandals on their feet that the vanquished kings had to kiss. And as we saw in studying chapter 4 of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar became self-exalted until he asked others, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Daniel 4:30. This may seem ridiculous in democratic contexts like those we live in, but it was common in ancient times. Another example was given by the Greek king Alexander. He became the living incarnation of divinity. He required of his subordinates the proskinesis, that is, that the people kneel before him. The Roman Caesar relied in his auctoritas, in his sacrosanct power of Pontificate Maximus, and in the divine ascendancy. They set up their statues in the temples and squares of Rome together with those of the gods. Following the thread of history, Constantine rebuilt the imperial cult, which was gradually accepted nominally by Roman Christianity. He required a rigorous protocol from anyone approaching his person with the purpose of accentuating the divine character of the emperor. He appeared with a golden tunic along with a diadem and required from the others the proskinesis. The same ceremony introduced by Constantine in Christianity eventually became adopted by the popes once there were no more Caesars in Rome. But the blasphemous titles that the popes arrogated for themselves are without equal, especially those such as Son of God, Holy Father, His Holiness. I personally believe that the Roman bishops and the emperors prior to Constantine did not believe that they were really gods, but they preferred to be equated with God or with their gods in such a way that their human will was not disputed, that their authority was supreme, and the people obeyed them blindly. Though verbally the popes pretended to honor the Father and the Son, they would deny it in their actions by pretending to occupy the place of God, arrogating to themselves authorities that pertain only to God. The proposal of being honored even above any other god for a short period of time did not come from King Darius. He was evidently caught off guard, so he didn't calculate the breadth of the order. The edict had been drafted by the conspirators, so the king only needed to add his royal seal. It is clear that Darius had learned of Daniel's role in the kingdom of Babylon and how the God of heaven had blessed him. And in fact, he trusted that his God could deliver him from the lions. Today, there are also many who are willing to deify others on the podiums of fame and sainthood. Some politicians are hailed by their supporters as if they were gods. The same goes for the idols of sport. Arriving at Ezeiza airport a few years ago, I was surprised to see that there was a glass room that was a temple erected to the god Maradona, a soccer star of South America. The same player asked those who deified him that way if they weren't going to hurt people's feelings for this. There are also the idols of cinema and notably also the gallery of saints erected by the Roman Catholic Church over the centuries, whom people worship in the manner of a cult, and by demanding that people kneel before the Pope, before the cardinals, bishops, and priests in confession. Are not all these people also being deified before their death? In the story of Daniel, part of the jealousy came from the fact that he was one of the slaves who had been brought from a subdued and destroyed kingdom. Why would the king honor such a man so greatly? None of these officers knew that the day would come when God would honor the humble to the highest degree in his kingdom. Jesus said, in fact, the meek will inherit the earth, and affirmed again in the book of Revelation that those humble children of God who were faithful throughout the centuries and millennia and who were despised by the world will become kings and priests of God and of his Son. When King Darius discerned the plan of those envious princes to condemn Daniel, he tried to save him. But the trap had been well set, because the Medo-Persian decrees could not be changed. There are other examples in the history of that kingdom that confirm it. Even in the divine laws that God gave to his people in ancient times, we find that a vow or oath could not be altered. Said God, when a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything he said. Numbers 30, verse 2. For this reason, Jesus warned not to swear by God lightly, Matthew 5:33, lest that we later regret it in dismay, as Jephthah when he took a hasty vow, as we read in Judges 11, or as Saul, who fortunately could not fulfill his promise to kill his son for violating his order not to eat in battle because the people didn't allow it. 1 Samuel 14. Finally, the only choice left to King Darius was to entrust Daniel to his God, who had proven faithful in protecting him and his 3 companions in the past. And early in the morning, he approached the cave of lions and asked, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel 6:20. Yes, Daniel experienced what David, the hero of more than 100 battles, wrote about the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Psalm 34:7. Yes, God has the power to save you from all kinds of beasts, even from human beasts. He has the power to save his children from a blazing furnace. He has the power to save an entire nation from destruction, as happened so many times in Israel's history when other more powerful nations coveted their land. But sometimes God seems to conceal himself and not to act. He has his reasons. What counts for us is knowing that in the end, God will fulfill his promise to save us, because he also has power to restore the lives of those who trusted him. And as happened again in Esther's story later, the tables are turned at the end. God saves his people, and the wicked who seek to destroy his people are destroyed. Let us ask ourselves one more question. How many people does God need to reveal himself to the world? He wants us all to participate in his missionary enterprise because he wants to share with us the privilege of sharing with others the gospel. Why a privilege? Because God entrusted us a tremendous message to share with the world. But if we take advantage of that privilege, God will not be silent. He can reveal His power through a single person who is faithful, such as Daniel, or through three, as in the case of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Soon a decree will be imposed that honors the Antichrist, and the world will be enraged against those who honor the true God on His holy day. There we will remember the example of Daniel, who did not hide his worship of the true God. His loyalty to the king did not suppress his loyalty to God, who is above all else. He worshipped looking towards the capital of his destroyed kingdom as if God were still there. He certainly remembered the inaugural temple prayer that King Solomon had done. When your people Israel have been defeated by an enemy because they have sinned against you, and when they turn back to you, when they pray toward this place and give praise to your name and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your servants, your people Israel. 1 Kings chapter 8. God had promised that He would dwell forever on that mountain of Moriah where Solomon had built the temple. And even if the devil managed to occupy that sacred place for a while, Daniel knew that God would fulfill that purpose. Through David, the Lord has said, "For the Lord has chosen Zion, He has desired it for His dwelling, saying, This is my resting place forever and ever. Here I will sit enthroned, for I have desired it." Psalm 132, verses 13 and 14. And in confirmation of that divine promise, when the New Jerusalem descends from heaven according to the book of Revelation, declared the prophet Zechariah, "His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley. The Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day there will be one Lord, and His name the only name." Zechariah chapter 14. Yes, my dear brother and sister, if the devil manages to dislodge God from your soul for a while, you can and must remember that the Lord is willing to return and dwell forever in your heart. He will do so with His people, literally dwelling in their midst forever. And so will it be with you in the temple of your soul, if you allow it to rest in your heart. He's not spiteful. Open your heart to Him, and He will enlighten your life with His presence. Amen.